and welcome. Today's class, we are going to discuss living world. Now, before I actually start with the topic, let me just look at the whole subject as such. Now, botany is a subject which is very, very vast. Biology as such is very vast. So, when we want to prepare for a test like NEET, which is based on a specific syllabus, then we have to be extremely specific as to what to study, how much to study, and more importantly, in what pattern to study. A book can be read in many ways. एक किताब को आप अलग अलग तरीके से पढ़ सकते हैं. हमारा एम क्या है? हमारा एम एक पर्टिकुलर एग्जाम क्लियर करना है so that we can enter into a good medical college. So the whole concept of studying botany, learning, will be focused on the exam and the pattern of exam. We are not going to focus on blind mugging up, याद करते जाओ समझ आए ना आए. No, we are going to focus on specific topics which are most commonly asked in NEET, on those topics where questions are framed or could be framed, and we will base our understanding primarily on NCERT. So when you attend the class, you must make notes and also have an NCERT with you so that you are aware how we are interpreting the NCERT, right? So let's look at the topic living world. As we proceed, we'll discuss more as to how to treat a topic, what to learn from a topic, how to look at a topic in detail, right? So I'm going to start with the topic living world, the first chapter. Now, what is living world? If you look at the world around you, there are so many habitats. Ocean है, rivers है, forest है, desert है, salt lake है, fresh water lake है. There are so many habitats. So if you travel, if you go to a lake, you will find different types of organisms. Then you go to mountains, you will again find different type of organisms, which means the diversity of habitat has led to many adaptations. So we have a diversity of organisms. So what are we looking at is primarily, there are so many organisms on this face of earth which are different from each other. So how do we study them and understand them? Now before I actually start with living organisms, I want to ask a question. What is living? पहले मैं डिस्टिंग्विश करना चाहती हूँ कि लिविंग और नॉन लिविंग में फ़र्क क्या है. मैं किसे लिविंग कहूँ, किसे लिविंग ना कहूँ. जब मुझे ये आइडेंटिफाई हो जाएगा कि लिविंग क्या है, तो मैं उसे क्लासिफाई, नेम, कैटेगराइज, स्टडी कर सकती हूँ. तो फर्स्ट थिंग इज टू आइडेंटिफाई व्हाट इज लिविंग. फॉर लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स, to identify living organisms, we study two things. One is characteristic features. पहली चीज हम क्या देखते हैं? कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर. तो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर क्या है? A feature or a trait which is present in a living organism it may share it with non-living, or all living organisms may not have that character. Characteristic feature क्या होगी? A feature which can be used to identify a living organism. I never said to distinguish it from non-living. मैंने ये नहीं कहा कि उसको non-living से अलग करने के लिए, मैंने क्या कहा? पहचानने के लिए. So I can use it to identify a living organism, right? This feature may or may not be present in all living organisms. This feature may or may not be present in all living organisms, which means it cannot be used as a feature to demarcate. Demarcate करना मतलब अलग करना. मैं इस फीचर को यूज नहीं कर सकती पिन पॉइंट करने के लिए कि यही लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म है. So a characteristic feature is present in living organisms, no doubt, but may not be present in all living organisms. So to define a living organism, we use defining features. जब इस चैप्टर में हम समझते हैं कि भाई फीचर्स क्या हैं, ग्रोथ, रिप्रोडक्शन, तो हम कहते हैं ये डिफाइनिंग नहीं है. तो डिफाइनिंग क्या है? A feature which is necessarily present in only living organism. Non-living में वो बिल्कुल नहीं होनी चाहिए. So, a character or feature which is necessarily present in all living organisms. ब्रैकेट में हम लिख देते हैं absent in non-living. जो वो फीचर जिसके बिना लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म बन ही नहीं सकता, हो ही नहीं सकता, या जिस फीचर के बेसिस पे मैं लिविंग और नॉन लिविंग को क्लियरली डिमार्केट कर सकूं, अलग कर सकूं, उसको मैं कहूंगी डिफाइनिंग फीचर. बाकी फीचर्स जो लिविंग में होते हैं, सब में नहीं होते शायद, या फिर किसी किसी में नहीं होते, या शायद वैसा सिमिलर फीचर नॉन लिविंग में भी होता है, विल बी कॉल्ड characteristic feature. So when I try to define what is living, then I will concentrate on characteristic feature and defining feature. Please note so that we can start with these features. Note कीजिए. Pankaj, yes, we will look at metabolism, consciousness. We will look at all these features, metabolism, consciousness. This is what we are actually going to look at. So if you've copied, then we'll start with the first feature. We'll start with the first feature. The first feature that we study is growth. First feature that we look at is growth. Growth can be explained on the basis of twin characteristics. We say that growth is on the basis of twin characteristics, means two characters. Growth is defined or identified on the basis of two features. दो features के basis पे हम growth को identify करते हैं. Which are the two features? Increase in mass and increase in number of cells. So how do I identify growth? मैं growth को कैसे देखूं? Growth can be identified on the basis of if there is increase in mass of the organism or individual, or if I can see increase in the number of cells. Now what will cause growth? Growth का cause क्या है? Cell division. Growth is going to be caused by cell division. And which type of division? Usually mitosis. Remember, mitosis we study for growth. So growth is caused by cell division, which may lead to both increase in number of cells, and if that cell division is occurring in a multicellular organism like us, अगर ये cell division हमारे अंदर हो रही है, then increase in mass. So cell division can lead to, cell division से क्या हो सकता है? Increase in number of cells भी होगा और increase in mass भी होगा. Both the things will be there. Now let us look at this cell division and growth in unicellular organisms. अब हमारे पास इतने सारे organisms हैं, हमें cell division को unicellular organism में देखते हैं. Amoeba, paramecium, bacteria. So if I look at cell division in unicellular organism, you will see that cell division leads to increase in number of cells in the population. Cell division will not increase size of organism. Cell division से amoeba का size नहीं बढ़ेगा. Cell division से population का size बढ़ेगा. एक amoeba से दो amoeba, 4 amoeba. So what is happening? The size of population will increase. Isn't it same as reproduction? In unicellular this means, in unicellular specifically, in unicellular this means cell division and reproduction are same, or we say are mutually, or we say they are which type of characters? Mutually inclusive. ये term important है हमारे लिए. मतलब दोनों सेम है, या आप कह सकते हैं are synonyms. दोनों एक ही चीज हैं. Can I now say growth is different? When I say cell division, I am representing cell division for growth. So, cell division is equal to growth is equal to reproduction. Can I say growth is different from reproduction? Both are using the same cell division. Both are using the same cell division. So this means in unicellulars, growth cannot be an exclusive event. एक independent, exclusive, different event नहीं है. So in unicellulars, growth is not an exclusive or independent event, whether growth is occurring or reproduction is occurring. Same cell division is responsible for it. एक ही cell division growth भी करवाती है और reproduction भी करवाती है. तो मैं क्या कहूंगी? Growth in unicellulars. मैंने पूरी growth को नहीं लिखा बेटा. Growth in unicellulars is only a characteristic feature. Growth in unicellulars is only a characteristic feature. It cannot be defining feature in unicellulars. Please copy, then I'll come to multicellulars. Done beta? Done? So let's look at multicellulars. Now in multicellulars, if I compare, let's look at humans. If I look at multicellulars, then the cell division which occurs in our body, can be responsible for increase in mass. It can be responsible for increase in our size or mass, can be responsible for repair, regeneration. इसका मतलब सेल डिवीजन सिर्फ रिप्रोडक्शन नहीं करेगा, सेल डिवीजन एक्सक्लूसिव ग्रोथ कर सकता है. सो इन मल्टीसेल्युलर्स ग्रोथ कैन बी ऑब्जर्व्ड इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ रिप्रोडक्शन. इन मल्टीसेल्युलर्स ग्रोथ एंड रिप्रोडक्शन are different events. There are different cells responsible for it, so they are different events, or we can say they are exclusive. They are exclusive from each other. They are exclusive or independent or different from each other. So in multicellulars, we don't have that problem of overlapping of growth and reproduction. Multicellular में ऐसी कोई problem नहीं है. लेकिन यूनिसेल्युलर में मैं ग्रोथ को रिप्रोडक्शन से अलग नहीं कर सकती. राइट? लेट अस नाउ कंपेयर विद रिस्पेक्ट टू ग्रोथ लिविंग टू नॉन लिविंग. ग्रोथ के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में लिविंग और नॉन लिविंग को कंपेयर करके देखते हैं. अगर ग्रोथ के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में मैं लिविंग और नॉन लिविंग को कंपेयर करूं, क्या नॉन लिविंग थिंग्स ग्रो करती हैं? कैन यू आंसर बेटा? डू नॉन लिविंग थिंग्स ग्रो? Do they show any type of change in their mass, size? Do they grow? So I am waiting for an answer. Do non-living things grow? So let us see whether I have an answer from you people. Quickly. Are non-living things capable of growth? If you think they are, give me an example. Are non-living things capable of growth? I am waiting for an answer, beta. Are non-living things capable of growth? Okay, so let's proceed. Yes, but not because of cell division. Not because of cell division. They are capable of growth by addition of material from outside. How do they grow in non-living things? Growth is by apposition or accretion. Growth is by apposition or accretion, that is addition of new materials from outside. So if I have a sand dune, ये क्या है? सैंड ड्यून. मिट्टी होती है ना रेगिस्तान में, सैंड ड्यून. इफ मोर सैंड accumulates on it, if more sand accumulates on it, it will grow in size. If you have, let us say, a stack of bricks. This is a stack of bricks. If you add bricks over this, more bricks over this, you will find the stack is growing taller. You had these many bricks, you put more bricks over it, the stack is going taller. So it is growing. You are growing taller because of growth due to cell division, and that stack of brick is growing taller because of addition of more bricks to the stack. So there is growth. Though the growth is external, it is not internal growth. So growth can occur in non-living things. What about living things? Please copy. What about living? लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स में ग्रोथ कैसे होगी? In living organisms, or living cells. Growth is intrinsic. Growth is intrinsic, internal. Intrinsic or internal. There is addition of new protoplasm by the cell itself, or you can say there is addition of new cells to the body by the organism itself. So our body doesn't grow because cells are coming to us and joining here and there. No. There is cell division or addition of new cells, new protoplasm from internal methods. So I can now say that intrinsic growth is unique for every living organism. So intrinsic growth is a defining feature. Intrinsic growth only, growth nahi. Defining feature of living organisms. MCQ में आप ध्यान रखेंगे. In an MCQ you will remember that ग्रोथ, अगर सिर्फ ग्रोथ दिया हुआ है, ग्रोथ इज अ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर. Growth is a characteristic feature, whereas intrinsic growth is a defining feature. You will take care of this in an MCQ because you mug up and go. Metabolism, consciousness, done. But please read the book carefully. Intrinsic growth is a defining feature of living organisms. Growth is only a characteristic feature. Growth is only a characteristic feature. So this is our first point, growth. Let's come to the second point. Okay, there's a question. Vinayak, growth by accretion. Okay, you answered for the secondary growth. Okay, then in living and intrinsic, Ashish, very good. Very good. So internal or intrinsic growth will be therefore a defining feature. Have you understood the basic concept of growth? This is what you have to actually note or remember for your MCQ. Second, reproduction. Second is reproduction. Reproduction is a process by which new ones are formed by the parents. So formation of next generation by the parent generation. Formation of next generation, please write. Formation of next generation by the parent generation will be called reproduction. Reproduction can be by two methods, which we will do in detail in later chapters: asexual and sexual. Asexual reproduction uses mitosis. In sexual, there is meiosis and fertilization. This is a complex and slow process. whereas this is a faster method. So I am just mentioning some of the asexual methods. Of course, we will do these methods in detail in later chapters. Sporulation, algae and fungi में होती है, budding, fragmentation, this is what are methods of asexual reproduction. So now the point is reproduction a defining feature? The first objection comes from again unicellulars. Same thing which we had done just now. In unicellulars, growth and reproduction cannot be distinguished, so are synonyms. They cannot be distinguished, therefore they are same. So can I now consider reproduction as defining? No, because you will not be able to know or judge or say that it is growing or reproducing, because both occur by the same process. If I now come to multicellulars or other organisms, there are many organisms which cannot reproduce. There are organisms which do not reproduce. Can you give me the examples? Can you give me the examples of organisms which do not reproduce? Can you give me the examples, beta? So I am waiting for your answers. Examples of organisms which do not reproduce. कोई ऐसे organisms हैं जो reproduce नहीं कर पाते? So let me see whether you have given any answers. Okay, I think I am getting the answers a little late, so I will continue. Let us look at some of the examples which do not reproduce. If you look at a society of honeybee, there is a queen bee which is fertile female, so she will reproduce. There are drones which are fertile males, so they will reproduce. But the worker bee is a sterile female. So first example I can take which does not reproduce is worker bee. Another example we can take is there may be sterile humans. The sterility in humans can be due to genetic disorders, can be due to hormonal imbalance, can be due to genetic disorder, can be due to hormonal imbalance. So they will also fail to reproduce. Now we have certain hybrids. Of course, they are hybrids prepared under captivity, such as mule. A mule will also not reproduce. It is sterile. This means that all living organisms may not reproduce. So reproduction, so what is our inference? Reproduction is only a characteristic feature. It cannot be a defining feature. So our result will be reproduction. Okay, so I've got some answers from you. Very good. Worker honeybee, mule, sterile animals, worker bee, Hyrenius had sterile flowers. Yes, there can be neuter flowers. In sunflower, you do have neuter flowers. Jaswant has mentioned mule, worker bee, infertile humans. Very good. Divyam has said drones, Shruti, mules and drones. Anuradha has said infertile females, drones. So we have got correct answers from most of you. So these are the animals which are not able to reproduce, large number. You can add this to plants also. Neuter flowers in sunflower, they don't have either anther or stigma, no ovary, no androecium, therefore they are also sterile, which means our result or inference is reproduction is only a characteristic feature. Let us then come to the third thing, metabolism. Metabolism is the sum total of all metabolic processes which take place inside the body of an organism. Now the biggest confusion which children have, biggest confusion in this topic which most of you have is metabolism and metabolic reaction. So what is metabolic reaction? A metabolic reaction may be just one step which is enzymatically controlled. One step which is enzymatically controlled, which is part of this metabolism. Metabolic reaction is one biological process, one enzymatically controlled step. For example, digestion of starch by salivary amylase. I am using an example of animal, it's much better understood by you. If I take metabolic processes of plants, you get confused. So let's stick to animal, human being. This is a metabolic reaction. Similarly, digestion of protein in stomach by pepsin will be a metabolic reaction. It will not be metabolism. The complete digestion through your digestive system is metabolism, whereas each step of that digestive process is a metabolic reaction, So this means A metabolic reaction can be performed in vitro. It can be performed in vitro. In vitro means in artificial medium such as a test tube. It can be performed in vitro. In vitro means in artificial or synthetic medium such as test tube. So when I am performing that metabolic reaction in test tube, it can be considered non-living. But when that metabolic reaction is occurring inside your body, then it is a living reaction. So metabolic reaction can be both living. When is it living? When it is inside your body. It can be non-living also when it is being performed in vitro. This is true for only metabolic reaction. Can I have metabolism in vitro? Can I have the complete digestion, the whole process of digestion of food in a test tube? Quickly answer. Is it possible to have metabolism in an artificial medium? Is it possible to have metabolism in an artificial medium? So I am waiting for your answers. Is it possible to have metabolism in an artificial medium? So let me see if any one of you has answered. So is it possible? Can we have metabolism in an artificial medium? So let's answer this. No. Metabolism, the complete process, can take place only inside living organism. So first thing, metabolism is a defining feature. In non-living you can't have metabolism. Second thing, when I say only living organism means for metabolism to take place, cellular organization is necessary. For this to occur, we must have living cell. If I give you a dead cell, let's say I have a dead animal and I put food into it, I put sugars, proteins into a dead animal, will there be any metabolism? No. I must have functional cells capable of synthesizing enzymes, hormones, absorption, secretions, etc. This means that cellular organization is also a defining feature. So how many defining features have we found till now? 3. Intrinsic growth, metabolism and cellular organization. So for living organisms we have marked 3 defining features: intrinsic growth, metabolism and cellular organization. Quickly copy and we'll come to the last feature then. So some of you have answered. Some of you have answered, very good. Shri Krishna has answered, no, it is not possible. Dibanik, no. So most of you have answered, no, it's not possible. So by adding enzymes in test tube, we can only have in vitro metabolic reaction. For metabolism, we will require living cells. Quickly copy, then I'll come to the last one. So the last feature that we look at is consciousness. This is definitely the most complicated, most complex to understand, most complex to assess. So what is consciousness? Consciousness means to be aware of one's surroundings, to be aware of one's surroundings, or you can say to be responsive. These are all definitions we take for consciousness. To be responsive means to respond to stimuli, to respond to any stimuli. This is what is consciousness. Non-living things cannot do this. If you take a chair and put it in sunlight, in the month of June, in the afternoon, take that chair and put it in center of the road. It will not move. It will not feel any heat or anything. It will just stay there. It doesn't feel it. But if I make you stand there, you will run. Why? Because it is extremely hot. So you are responding. Birds, animals, anything, they will run away from unfavorable or unsuitable conditions. So the ability to respond to stimuli, ability to be aware of your surroundings, what is happening, changes, is consciousness. And consciousness definitely is a defining feature. For humans, we further extend this to self-consciousness. We further extend this to be self-consciousness, means not only to be aware of your surroundings, but also to be aware of your own self, to be aware of changes which are occurring in your body, why they are occurring, to understand disease, pathogens, how they affect your body. That will be now called self-consciousness, which is specific only for humans. You may say, what happens to a person in coma? Coma is a unique medical condition. The metabolism is still going on, cellular organization is still there. It's a unique metabolic condition. So we say that is an exception. So let us summarize. Let us now summarize what all we have marked. So we have marked characteristic features, and defining features. Right? So we have categorized growth is a characteristic feature, whereas intrinsic growth will be a defining feature. Reproduction is a characteristic feature. We won't have a defining feature to counter to reproduction. Then metabolism, cellular organization, and consciousness. For humans, especially self-consciousness. This is how we look at what is living. Quickly note, I'll now come to a question, so to assess how much you have followed. So quickly note so that I can put down a question on board. Ashish has asked a question. Is man in coma living or dead? Living. A man in coma is living. I said there is metabolism going on. The heart is working. The cellular organization is there. He is definitely on most of the machines. That is why we say it's a most complex feature. So a man in coma is otherwise living, but functionally with respect to consciousness, non-responsive. Non-responsive. This is another thing you have asked. Is self-consciousness defining feature? I have answered that question. It will be defining feature only for humans. Only for humans, not otherwise. Have you copied? So I can summarize that living organisms are self-replicating because they can reproduce, evolving because they keep changing. Are they interactive? Yes. Interactive means they respond to stimuli. Interactive means they respond to stimuli. Is there anything common apart from these things in all living organisms? In all of us, right from bacteria to us, the connecting link is DNA, the genetic material. So all living organisms have another thing in common. All living organisms have another thing in common, that is a common genetic material, DNA. Of course, there are variations. The circular DNA, linear DNA, associated. So there are variations. Exceptions are also there. We have viruses which have RNA as genetic material. But on the whole, the common link between bacteria to us is the common genetic material DNA, which carries all the information for reproduction, growth, metabolism, cellular organization, consciousness, all these factors. Let me now come to a question. So let's put down a question. Are there any doubts that you've given? How do they respond? A man in Aishwarya has asked, how do they respond a man in coma, I think that is what you want to ask, they will not respond. That is why we say it's a complex thing. Okay? So let me come to question number 1. Growth and reproduction are synonymous in. They are synonymous in 1. All algae and some fungi, and planaria, desmids, diatoms and protozoans. In all fungi and bryophytes. Growth and reproduction are synonymous in. Which will be the correct answer? Quickly. Quickly. So I am waiting for an answer. So let's see who's going to give an answer to this. It's a simple question. It's a simple question, quickly. Oh yes, I have got answers from so many of you. Amal. No, Amal, you can't have this answer. Amal, you have answered it wrong. फिर से पढ़ो उसको बेटा. आशीष, विदुषी, सुभाष, ऐश्वर्या, श्रेया, हर्षिता, कपिंजल, इशिता, श्रीकांत, श्री कृष्णा, इशिता, सुजाता, दिव्यांशी, तुषार. Very good. You are all marked third. Why third? Why is third the answer? Because all of these are unicellular. Remember, we had said for unicellular, growth and reproduction is synonymous. Have you understood how the questions are projected? This is how we will give. We will not ask you unicellular. We will give you examples of unicellular. Let's come to the next question. Let's come to the next question. Which one of the following is not a defining feature of living organisms? So this is question number 2. Consciousness, intrinsic growth, reproduction, and cellular organization. Which is not a defining feature? Which is not a defining feature? So let's see. Which answers do I get? Okay, I am waiting for your answers. Not a defining feature. Okay, very good. I've got a good list and all of them have answered correct. Sunidhi, Aravind, Vidhan, Jayaram, Anuradha, Digbijoy, Divya, Ishita, Tushar, Shreya. You've all answered correctly and many more, of course. Reproduction. Reproduction is not a defining feature. All others will be defining feature. This is how questions are framed from this part. Let's come to the second part of the chapter. Is this part clear to everyone? Have you been able to understand what to actually study from this part? What to actually assess? The aim is to assess the characteristic and defining features, and accordingly if there are any specific examples. So let's come to the second part of the chapter. We have understood that what is living. I want to now understand how many living organisms. So I am looking at diversity. I am looking at diversity. If there are any other doubts or questions, so we can go ahead otherwise. Okay, I think most of you have got the point. So, diversity in the living world. So, diversity in the living world. We have understood that the living and non-living are different. So, I want to understand how many living are there. So, the term we use is biological diversity or biodiversity. Biological diversity or biodiversity. Now, there are different definitions for this. By the time we reach ecology, we will have a more diverse definition for this. But with respect to living world, just living organisms, biodiversity can be the different forms or types of organisms present on earth. So, different plants, animals, microbes, different plants, animals, microbes, fungi, viruses, bacteria, any of these organisms, the different types which are present on earth. According to IUCN, IUCN is International. What is IUCN? Can you give me the full form? Okay. IUCN is International. Are you writing the full form, beta? I am waiting otherwise. According to IUCN, so I am waiting for the full form of IUCN so that we can proceed. International Union for Conservation of, so let me see if someone has answered. Nature and natural resources. According to this association, this is our main association which studies biodiversity, changes which are occurring in it, how to conserve it, right? So I have got some answers. Vidushi, International Union for Conservation of Nature. Ashish has given a better answer, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So Vidushi and others, please change it to nature. Nature के बाद भी है, nature के बाद भी है nature and natural resources. According to IUCN, there are around 1.7 to 1.8 million organisms. There are around 1.7 to 1.8 million organisms which are present on earth. So many organisms. So how do I study them? If I start to study each organism independently, imagine studying 1.7 million organisms independently. Is it possible? No. So if I want to study this biodiversity, we need a system, a scientific system of naming, classification, identification. So we should be able to group them on the basis of their characters. It is easier to study general characters of a large group than each and every organism independently. So we need therefore a system by which we can name organisms, by which we can group organisms, जिसको classification कहते हैं, which will eventually help us in easy identification of organisms. So our aim is to study the organisms. So first thing I am starting with is how to name an organism, because if I have to classify them and group them, I must have a name. I can't say A is this, B is this, C is this, A, B, C, D 26 खत्म हो जाएंगे. I cannot say that thing which looks like this, that thing which has such a thing. No, I must have a specific name. So the first thing to understand biodiversity, the first thing that I am looking at is nomenclature. The first thing I am looking at is nomenclature. Nomenclature is naming of organisms. Nomenclature is naming of organisms. Now usually we have common names, brinjal, potato, tomato. These are common names of vernacular names. Most of the organisms which we know directly, organisms which we have never seen or are not of direct use to us, organisms which are not of direct use to us, we have not given them any common name. But the vegetables, fruits we eat, flowers, the domestic animals, wild animals which we see, we have common names. So common names or vernacular names. Vernacular name means local language name. Common name or vernacular names are usually given to plants and animals which are present around us. Such names are easy. They are from a day-to-day language. Tomato, tomato, anything, they are easy. What we speak, the language we know. So they are easy not only to remember but pronounce, everything. Why can't we use these names? If they are easy, let's just use them. there are many limitations or drawbacks. A single organism can now have different vernacular names. See, the same vegetable may be named differently in different states of our own country. Onion, pyaz, kandha, these are same thing. You may not know that this is the same thing. Brinjal, it is also called eggplant, bengan. So there are different names we are using. Aubergine, they are all for brinjal. Which means if there are so many names for the same organism, then how do we communicate? Some names may be incorrect or misleading. Seahorse, it's not a horse. It has nothing to do with horse, but we call it seahorse. Jellyfish, it's not a fish. Silverfish, it's not a fish. So there can be so many misleading names or incorrect names that this cannot be used as a dependable method. Therefore, the need for scientific naming. Therefore, the need for scientific naming, which should be universal. The same name should be used for one organism all across the world. The same name should be used. Now, different authors have suggested different types of naming, but the method which we have accepted and have been using for years is binomial nomenclature. The scientific naming that we use is binomial nomenclature. Which was given by Carolus Linnaeus. Binomial means two, right? So the name will have two parts. Binomial nomenclature is what was given by Carolus Linnaeus. So let's look at binomial nomenclature and some of the features. So what does binomial nomenclature means? Let's first understand it using a few examples. The name of species, please see I am saying species. The name of species has two components. The name of species has two components. A generic epithet and a specific epithet. Please see, the most common confusion you have is with species and specific epithet. Specific epithet is not the name of species. For example, Mangifera is the generic epithet which can also represent the genus. Indica is the specific epithet which does not indicate species. Indica represents the species Mangifera indica, belonging to genus Mangifera. I am repeating. Indica is a specific epithet. Indica is a specific epithet. In the name Mangifera indica, indica represents the species Mangifera indica belonging to genus Mangifera. Species का नाम is still, the name of species is still Mangifera indica. A specific epithet is like your first name and your surname is being represented by the generic epithet. So in your family, in your clan, all of you have the same surname. So if your surname is Sharma and I come to your house and say Mr. Sharma, there may be 4 Mr. Sharmas. How will I identify? So I will say Mr. Vivek Sharma. So Vivek is the specific epithet belonging to the clan of Sharma. So I can have different species belonging to Mangifera. Let me take another example which you commonly use. Brassica campestris. This is mustard. To the same genus Brassica, you may now have Oleracea. This is cabbage. So Brassica is the genus which may consist of different species. The different species of Brassica will have the same generic epithet but different specific epithet. I am repeating. The different species of Brassica will have same generic epithet but different specific epithet. So campestris is not a species. Let me put another example. Agaricus campestris. Agaricus campestris is mushroom. So can I say campestris is mustard? No. Brassica campestris is mustard. Can I say campestris is mushroom? No. Agaricus campestris is mushroom. This is the most common mistake that you make. Specific epithet and species. So name of a species will have 2 components, generic epithet and specific epithet. Generic epithet is representing the genus, but the specific epithet is not representing the name of species. Specific epithet is representing the species which may belong to the genus, but it is not representing the species. Rest of the rules are pretty simple. Generic epithet starts with capital letter. Specific epithet starts with small letter. Generic epithet is written first followed by specific epithet. I have underlined them because they are taken from Latin. We derived the names from Latin. So in print they should be in italics. When we are writing in print, then they should be in italics. If we are handwriting it, writing it by our hand, then it should be underlined. Then there is a law of priority. Suppose the same species has been given 2 names by 2 different scientists. So the name which is given first and is correct, the name which is given first and is correct will be therefore accepted. The name which is given first and is correct will be therefore accepted. We usually write the complete name as binomial epithet, which will have the generic name, specific epithet, followed by the name of scientist. Lin stands for Linnaeus. Lin को underline नहीं करोगे. You will not underline this. You will not put it in italics. Why? It's a name of scientist. It is the name of scientist. Kindly go through it and tell me if there are any doubts so I can come to a question. Kindly go through it and tell me if there are any doubts. If you have understood, good. Then I'll summarize the whole thing with 2 questions. Any doubts, beta? Okay, let me now just put a question to you. Let me just summarize this with a question to you. Question. So we have done 2 questions earlier. Question 3. The correct naming of pea plant is 1. Pisum sativum lin. 2. Pisum sativum. 3. Four. Okay, please give me an answer. The correct name of pea plant would be okay. Why don't we underline Lin? Because beta, Lin is the name of scientist. So it is not in Latin, it's in English. The name of the scientist is in English, not in Latin. Only Latin is to be underlined. Now please answer. Please answer. I am waiting for your answers. So let's see whether you are able to mark the answer correctly here. It's the most simple and common question which is asked. Okay, so all of you have given the correct answer, which is very good. Yodbir, why 1 beta? I have not underlined it. Please see. The generic and specific epithet have to be underlined. Please correct your answer, Yodbir. Generic and specific epithet have to be underlined. Name of scientist will not be underlined. Why? Because this is in Roman English and these 2 are in Latin. So the correct answer will be Pisum sativum lin. So what we'll do today is we'll just summarize the whole thing. Next class I'll start with another question to see how much you remember. So what we have discussed today, is 2 important aspects of the chapter. First, we have discussed the difference between characteristic versus defining features. Then we have discussed biodiversity, and we have started the discussion with an important aspect, that is binomial nomenclature. So we have started this discussion of biodiversity with an important aspect of binomial nomenclature. These are the three major things that we have discussed today. So next class what we are going to do is, we are going to start with again this with a question, just to see how much you remember, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the chapter. Are there any other doubts? Are there any other doubts, beta? Is it compulsory that there should be a scientific name? 101% beta. If there is no scientific name, then there will be no uniformity. Anyone may name anything, anything. So how will you know why this has been named like this? Why this name? You may get misguided. So there is a rule which has been set up, that all living organisms are to be given a scientific name using binomial nomenclature. If I propose a name, then it is not that I have proposed a name and you will accept it. No. The name with its reasoning will be given to the IUCN. There are agencies for this. Okay, let me just continue with this. There are agencies for this, like International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. These are two main agencies. Then you can have bacterial, virological, all these nomenclatures. So IUCN will forward them to these agencies. They will look into this, follow the convention, and then accept a name. So it's a proper scientific method, right? Good day, beta. Any other doubts? Of course, you can ask further. And tomorrow we start with again these topics and naming, right? Good day, beta.